Hare Rama. We're only an hour late today. Yeah, I was on the phone. I had to make a phone call that I thought would take 20 minutes. It took an hour and a half, but this was the only time I could do it. It was the only time I could get the people on the line. Was it 7:30 in the morning? So here I am, and I don't know where everyone else is, but if you're still around waiting for me, I'm here. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I was studying this morning the perennial question, like you should know the question everybody asks. Everyone who becomes a devotee at some point in their life asks the question, wait a minute, how if in the spiritual world there's no envy, there's only love, how did I end up here? I don't understand. That question, well, I was researching on Vanipedia. They have you can research by topic. You can research questions that were asked to Srila Prabhupada. What an amazing resource that you can go and find all the questions that were asked to Srila Prabhupada on a certain topic. So I went in there, it says questions by topic, and then there's a topic called the spiritual world. So these are all the questions that people ask Prabhupada about the spiritual world, either devotees or guests. And as you could imagine, because this question is on everyone's mind, how could I become envious of Kṛṣṇa? It doesn't make sense. How could I leave the spiritual world? It doesn't make sense. That just by accident today, where I am in the questions, those questions came up. Like, I had told you all, I didn't even want to discuss this topic because it's controversial and we have better things to think about. So I'm just going down the list of questions, and the questions keep coming up. Why? 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 So I thought, well, what could I do? We should discuss those. But now, because we started an hour late, I'm a little reluctant to discuss them because I want to discuss them with everybody. So I think a lot of devotees lost faith that I would ever show up. I apologize for this, but I called. It's a government agency. I had to call to take care of some business, and they open at 7:30, and my neighbor told me if you want to get them, you have to call at 7:30. Otherwise, it's impossible. And I had to fill out some forms and so forth. And I called it 7:30, and we just got off at 9 o'clock. So, anyway, Kṛṣṇa is here, and this is really, these questions are for her. But maybe we'll get to them, maybe we won't. I just read them and added them to the list of questions from where we were reading yesterday. And I think we only have one more thing to read from yesterday, which would take us to the question about the devotees were asking Prabhupada, how do we fall down from the spiritual world? So this is interesting, right? So, I don't know, Kamini, are you there? Yeah. So Melbourne, yeah. So is it Melbourne that we're reading from? Melbourne. I thought we read from Melbourne. Didn't we read that yesterday? No, we didn't. Okay. So we'll see how far we get. But if we don't get there today, we're going to get there tomorrow. I have I can read it on my screen there. Remember a couple of weeks ago I was trying to read to the phone on the screen and see if it looked like I was looking at you? I don't think it will now. I had it more in front, but I'll read on the screen. This is a lecture on the Srimad Bhagavatam from the 6th canto, 1st chapter, text 1 through 4, and this is in Melbourne. Melbourne. In America we say, we have a place called Melbourne, but we call it Melbourne. I was born in Melbourne. In Australia it's Melbourne. So, Hari Sari asked Prabhupada, how do we understand then There are peacocks and flowers and trees in the spiritual world. Are these not eternal forms? Yes, they're more covered. Just like if you cover your body with a blanket, the hands and legs are invisible, but you are not the blanket. So these trees and plants, they're more covered. They're not in full manifestation. The human form is a full manifestation of the soul. So Prabhupada, I think he misunderstood, because Harisari was asking about the trees and plants in the spiritual world. They're covered in the spiritual world? Madhuvisa, he's asking if they were actually covered in the spiritual world. Prabhupada, no, not in the spiritual world. So Prabhupada just thought he was asking about lower forms of life in the material world, and he said, yeah, well, they're more covered. They're animals. Consciousness is more covered, dull. I just read something amazing yesterday. There's a devotee named Sahadev Das, and he has written many books. You might have seen in Mayapur. There's a table with like 20 books, all written by him. And he was describing the current situation and describing how human beings have become like animals. But he said something really funny. He said, actually, if I call the human beings animals, then I'm embarrassing and shaming the animals, because these human beings are worse than animals. Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said that. Human beings are worse than animals. I thought that was really a nice way. He said it some clever way. You know, if I say you're an animal, that will embarrass the animals, because they'll look at you and think, you're way worse than we are. And then he said, what's happening in the world today, I don't know if you're up on what's happening, but cases are rising. And you might say, well, the testing is better. But anyway, at least in America, in most states, there's a spike. So it doesn't really look like there's an end in sight in the near future to this mess. And he was saying, what you're seeing now is just the trailer for the movie. And another thing that's happening also. Some people, probably many people, are having a really hard time just being alone, not being able to go out and having to like live with themselves. That's like, how you doing, Prabhu? Oh, terrible. Why? I'm just with myself all day. I hate myself. You know, if you're like with yourself all day and going crazy, you maybe need a better relationship with yourself. You know, something to think about. Anyway. So then Harisari is saying, they're covered in the spiritual world, and Prabhupada explains it. So this is interesting. Listen to what he explains. Not in the spiritual world. There, that is voluntary. Some devotees want to serve Kṛṣṇa as a flower. They become a flower. If I want that as a flower, I shall lie down on the lotus feet of Kṛṣṇa. He becomes a flower voluntarily. And he can change his from flower to human body. Wow. If you get tired of being a flower, if you get tired of lotus feet and you want to like kiss Kṛṣṇa or something, you become a human. That is spiritual life. There's no restriction. If some devotee wants to serve Kṛṣṇa as a cow, he serves Kṛṣṇa as a cow, as calf, as flower, as plant, as water, as ground, field, or as father or mother, as friend, as beloved, anything. Yathā prapadyante tāṁs tathaiva bhajāmy aham. That is Krishna's all-powerfulness, spiritual life. And it's it's interesting, because if, let's say, you become an animal on this planet, and you look at these animals, some of the animals, their life it's not very nice, then you would think, well, I would never want to be that animal, and why would anyone want to be that animal? But in some way, in some perverted way, they had desires that were suited to that kind of body. But it's a little different than what Prabhupada is describing here in the spiritual world, in that you actually want that body. You want that. Prabhupada. You want, if he's in there, then I can't see the screen to read from. It's trouble in paradise. Nothing's perfect in this world, right? Have you noticed that? Nothing's perfect? Yeah. Like at every second we notice it, right? So, and Prabhupada's saying here, this is the spiritual world. You want Kṛṣṇa, you want to be in any form, Kṛṣṇa says, yes. You want that you want to serve as a flower? Okay, a peacock, whatever, yeah. And as I told you, I grew up surfing, so I was very addicted to the ocean and surfing. And when I was a new bhakta, I thought, I hope Kṛṣṇa has a surfboard, because I'd really like to be a surfboard. I don't know. Maybe Kṛṣṇa doesn't have a surfboard, and when I go back to Godhead, he'll get one because I want to be a surfboard. But now that I'm maturing in bhakti, I think I have other desires than being his surfboard. That's proof that I'm making advancement, I guess. Okay, so this is really interesting if you think about it. In material life, we want so many things we can't get. I think there's so many things. I mean, if you could just have anything you want, you'd probably have a long list, wouldn't you? At least, maybe if not long, at least a list of things. You could probably make a list. I think we could all make a list of things we want that we know are impossible to get, or at least we can't control situations to get them. They would have to happen by circumstance or some good karma or good luck, be in the right place at the right time, whatever. But probably the chances of that happening are slim. I read once that the chances of you, if you're a musician, making recording a song that becomes a hit are more rare than winning the lottery. So you say, I'd like to be a rock star, to be famous. Yeah. Probably won't happen for most of us. So we all have this list of things that we maybe would like, or maybe we liked before we were devotees, or even as devotees that would be difficult to achieve. But I'm speaking just ordinary people, their list. And then if you give up all those desires, and you just desire to love and serve Kṛṣṇa, then whatever spiritual desire you have, your purified desire, Kṛṣṇa will fulfill it. Isn't that amazing? Like, we're so stupid. We were trying to achieve things we can't achieve. And we're not getting Kṛṣṇa's help to achieve them, because why would he help us achieve them? Because there's nothing to do with our bhakti, nothing to do with him, so why would he help us? And then if you have no desire for anything, then whatever spiritual desire you have, Kṛṣṇa, okay, yeah, you want a body of a flower, no problem. You want to kiss my lotus feet all day? No problem, you can be a flower. And what else did Prabhupada say? Peacock? Let's go down the list again. And Prabhupada said, this is interesting, I never read this before, you can change from a flower to a human, and maybe back to a flower, I don't know, and you're thinking, if we're thinking materially, say, like, why would you want to be a flower? But it's all about service. And if I can serve Kṛṣṇa in a certain way, and I have that nature, that rasa, that desire, then if I can serve him best as a flower, why would I care that I don't have a human body? I wouldn't. That's material thinking. But what else did Prabhupada say? A cow, a calf, a flower, a plant, water, ground. I want to be water in the spiritual world. And Kṛṣṇa can drink me. Wow. Field, father, mother, anything. Then Prabhupada ends this statement. Lucy wants to be Kṛṣṇa's flute, right? Is that it? Or you just want to sing for Kṛṣṇa all day? I just like, that's what I think. I think like, I just want to go out and sing. Or be in Kṛṣṇa's band, if he has a band, that would be pretty nice. But yathā prapadyante. So Prabhupada ends this by saying, yeah, whatever you want, Kṛṣṇa will give it to you. If you don't want anything personally, then Kṛṣṇa will give you whatever you want in relation to him, whatever desire you have for loving and serving him. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? At least compared to what's going on right now. All the things we want, we can never have. And if you want them, you have to work very hard. If there are things you can achieve, you have to work very hard for them. in Krishna Lila, you want it, and Krishna says, okay, here it is. That's pretty good. As we said a few days ago, but that Krishna could only do that to someone who's pure, because, and this would make a really funny video. I have so many ideas for funny videos. Why don't you all come here? We'll start a production team. This video is like, you know, what if whatever you thought, whatever you thought would, you know, it just happened, like in the spiritual world, you know, you just think would happen, you know. Wouldn't that be cool? And all of a sudden, you know, it's this young, like, attractive guy, big muscles, you know. And he's thinking, and all of a sudden, like, 10 beautiful girls come and start hugging him, because that's what he's thinking. Like, and he's married, oh, that's going to be, and his wife comes beating him on the head. And she says, his wife says, no, I don't think that it would be cool that whatever you're thinking of would happen, because your life would be a total mess if that happened. So, you know, if Krishna is going to give you that Shakti, that whatever you want, it happens, it's because you want it for him. And if he gives us that Shakti before we're pure, whoa, husbands are going to get, all you wives are going to have to buy a stock of rolling pins to beat your husbands in the head, because whatever they're thinking, you know what they're thinking. Okay, I don't want to tell you what they're thinking. You already figured it out. Or you already know what they're thinking. You're going to have to beating him, and you're going to have to be beating all the girls that have manifested out of his mind, that are surrounding him now. Hare Krishna. That would be such a funny video. Who's going to make that video? That would be so funny. Hare Krishna. Wouldn't it? I like to be Krishna's mirror, so he can see himself every day at me. Wow. Okay. Sounds good. Bhakti retreat in Switzerland. Oh, yeah. Satyanandan Swami, yeah. Well, you know, traveling now is probably not a good idea. So maybe in the spiritual world, Lucy, who's now Leela Shakti, let's give a big hand for Leela Shakti. She was initiated on Sunday. She's the Shakti of the Leelas. She's going to make all kinds of Leelas happen in South Africa. For bringing, so we have some singers here. We have Marco on guitar, Krishna Karshani singing, Kamini is singing, Lucy, she can play a harmonium, she can probably play all kinds of things and sing. So we'll all go back to Godhead and we'll start a band and we'll just sing for Krishna. We'll call it the Krishna Song Band. That sounds good. Like, you want to do that? And, you know, maybe some of us will become flutes, because maybe the flute sounds better than our voice. Yes, Prabhupada said we can be a flower, but after flower we want to serve Krishna in a different form. We can become a human. Now, I have to say something about that. And this is just an observation. Yeah. This is just the observation for discussion. I have seen that when Prabhupada was pressed with certain questions, can this happen? He would say yes, and he would give a philosophical answer. He said, because, like, can you fall from the spiritual world? Yes, because you're independent. Can you change from one form to another? Yes, because the spiritual world is dynamic. So he'd give like a general philosophical answer, kind of a broad. So it's a principle. Now, whether it's happening like ever or regularly or once in a while, he doesn't talk about it. He talks about a principle. Yes, it can happen, because the principle was yathā prapadyante. Krishna's reciprocating. So he reciprocates. If he reciprocates, then whatever you want, he can give you. That's the principle. So you see, he doesn't give specific examples, at least here. In other places I read, I never, at least from my remembrance, in these discussions of the spiritual world's dynamic, you can go from here to there. The people from Vaikuntha can go to Krishna Loka, go to Braj. That can happen. And say, how is that, Prabhupada? And he said, it's dynamic. It's not static. It's not limited. So it's kind of a principle. It can happen. Can happen means it has happened, and it also could mean it doesn't happen all the time. It just can happen. Can we fall from the spiritual world? What's the principle? You always can fall. We're going to read it. We'll read more later. I don't know today. Because today's my wife's birthday. And today at 9:30, you were probably hoping we would go longer, but she's going to come knocking on the door. She wants, there's a bull that's leaving his body and only has maybe another day or two to live, and she wants to go see the bull. So right after class, we're going to see the bull. Vijay Lakshmi, you can't be Jasoda, but you can be in that rasa, Vatsalya, as parental. But you can't be Jasoda, her position is taken. Sorry, you're too late. Actually, her position is eternally taken, you can never have it. But you can be in that rasa as a mother. Celine, but Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa wants to be Celine Dion in the spiritual world, but in the spiritual world, she wouldn't be considered a good singer. She would just be considered a croaking frog, because their voices are much different. Their voices are dripping with the syrup of love of Krishna. Yeah, it may be possible. You can't be Krishna. Yeah, Krishna's flute's eternal. Yeah. That may be true, yeah. What did Prabhupada say? Let's go back up there. There's no restriction. Cow, calf, flower, plant, water. If we want to do a little transcendental speculation, Marco, we can say, yes, Krishna's flute, he has more than one. It's taken, but if someone wants to be a flute, he could have a new one. And that person could be that, in theory. Right? But you definitely can't be Nanda, you can't be Jasoda, you can't be Radha. Those are irreplaceable. Anyway, one time, devotees were asking Prabhupada a question about the spiritual world. And Prabhupada's answer was, well, you know, you're going to have to, I can't answer that question. You'll have to go there and figure it out. You don't have to go and figure it out. You say, you'll have to go there and find out. It was like sometimes there's a, because of the transcendental nature of it, we may not understand. So yeah, I can't be Radha, I can't be the gopis, these eternal associates, I can't be them. I can be in their mood. I can be in that rasa. But as far as the flute, it may be, and it may not be. You want to be if you can't be a flute, what about you can be Krishna's saxophone? Does he have a saxophone? Like I think the question in everyone's mind is there a limit to what you can be? I mean, do they have surfboards? Well, I don't really want to be a surfboard. I'd rather be a boogie board. Or how about this? Can I be Krishna's skis? Because I prefer skiing. The point is that when you're pure, it manifests from a pure desire. When you're impure, it manifests from this desire to, I want to be how do you pronounce her name? Celine Dion. I want to be Celine. No, when you're a pure devotee, you won't want to be her. Don't worry. So, yeah. So some of these desires may not be really exactly what you would want, because in a pure state, what you want is coming from your transcendental love for Krishna, and it's uncovered as your pure spiritual essence. So it's going to be a little different. And until then, what we can say, and I've talked about this before, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago in Mayapur, we were talking about rasa and bhava, and what you find is that as you progress in bhakti, your inclination for a particular rasa, and even your inclination for a particular person in rasa, becomes stronger, and it's natural. It's like you wake up one day and you go, oh my God, cowherd boys. I have to run out with the cowboy boys. Where's the Bhagavatam about the cowboy boys? I have to read it. It becomes something you just become attracted to. So that happens naturally as you progress. And especially when you're in asakti, the inclination. This is general. It could happen before. The inclination for that particular rasa becomes very, very strong. And then in bhava, it's revealed. This is, you begin to reveal. It's not an inclination. It's like, this is who you are. This is your eternal identity. So it's natural as you advance, that's going to become stronger. And so that's why I said, I probably won't desire to be Krishna's surfboard, because that was coming from my material condition side, not from my rasa, not from the stage of being in asakti or bhava. So as you come to that stage, it'll naturally manifest. Okay? Does that sound good? Now we have another question. Very good question. Kṛṣṇa is... You can send Janava a happy birthday if you want. She's very private. She probably don't send her. She'll go, did you tell people it was my birthday? Why did you tell them? Don't send her. Send it to me now. Don't send it to her. She might get the rolling pin, and she might get the rolling pin on me for saying that. There's a picture of my god sister from like 1975, and she loves to cook, and she's like this with a rolling pin, looking at she's in the kitchen, and she's funny, so someone's taking photographs, so she goes like this with a rolling pin. And I saw that picture on her Facebook page, and I wrote her, I don't think she got it, and I said, we will conquer the world with a rolling pin. We're rolling chapatis. We'll conquer the world by feeding people puris and kachoris and samosas. So, here is a question from Kṛṣṇa. What about the desire to be in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya? So, following in line with what we're saying here, that Krishna reciprocates with your desire, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained that if a devotee desires to be in Gauranga Lila, he can be. And Kṛṣṇa now is in Mayapur, so she's in Gauranga mood. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, and then Krishna Kṛṣṇa is thinking, oh my God, now I have to decide whether it's Krishna Lila or Mahaprabhu's Leela. I don't know. That's not fair. That's a tough decision. Why do I have to decide? Why can't I be in both? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says you can be in both. That's the good news. You can be in both. Good news, Krishna Kṛṣṇa, you don't have to worry anymore. And then the next question is, how could I be in two places at once? I'm one soul in two places. One soul in two places. I don't. When I went to school, one was one and one wasn't two. And now saying one is two and it's two different people. And the Bhagavad Gita says we're individual soul. But how could individual soul break in half? And Bhagavad Gita says it's indestructible, invisible. You can't cut it, dry it, burn it. And you're sitting there for like the next 3 days trying to, what about? Yeah, that's the point. You can't look at it materially. Otherwise, you'd be we'll do a video like this, and it's like, okay, that's one soul, but it's split, but it says in the Gita it doesn't split, and you can be in two places in Leela. And it's like, say, June 23rd, and then, the sun sets, and he hasn't slept yet. And he's going through the same question. June 24th, sun's rising. But how is it possible? And then the sun sets, the sunrise, June 25th. Sunrise, but I just don't understand. All right, I have some good news for everyone. You don't have to understand. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, if a devotee desires to enter Krishna Lila, at the same time wants to enter Gauranga Lila, he will have a place in both places, because in the spiritual world there's a place, there's Navadvip, and there's also Braj, and you can be in both places. And that solves everybody's problems. For all of you who like Mayapur and Vrindavan, your problems are over. You can go to both, if that's your desire. And then you're thinking, well, do like I sign on is there a form, like, like my last will and testament, that I want to go to both places, and like you put it at the devotees, at the deity's feet? How does it work? It just works because it's your desire. We have a message from Kamaniya. If you're wanting to follow updates about His Holiness Bhakti Chira Swami, they're posting updates every 12 hours. Maharaj's official Facebook page. Thank you for that, because I was wondering how to find out. Krishna's mercy, Maharaj is slowly improving. However, he is still in a critical stage. Therefore, our prayers requested, don't, if someone is critically ill and they're getting better, just keep praying, because anything can happen. I have a disciple named Sebastian in Chile, and he's also been in hospital, I think, a few weeks now. He's starting to get better, but, you never know. So I'm praying to Krishna for his well-being. The devotees are praying. So Krishna Kṛṣṇa says, so more or less it seems that we can have many forms in the spiritual world. And now it might be a difficult question, but how is it relating to the idea that we only have one form? I think I answered that. And the answer is, don't stay up late. The answer to your question is, don't stay up late at night trying to figure out the answer to your question. That's the answer. And Prabhupada, he's just saying, well, Prabhupada said, like, whatever form you have, you'll be satisfied with it. But it's just it's not about you. It's just like you want to serve Krishna, in a different way. You're already satisfied as a flower, but you want to maybe enter Rasa Leela or something. Graduating from flower to gopi. It's possible, right? Yes? Today's graduation day. All the flowers in the spiritual world are sitting in their pots, and they're going to become gopis, and they're getting their diplomas for gopis. His birthday from Facebook. It comes up. All right. If you can all wish her a happy birthday, but don't tell her I told you. Otherwise, she became more of a private person than she was when she was younger. Now she's just living in Alachua, growing her vegetables, does a little marriage counseling. And my daughter was saying, she said generally, my daughter asked me a question. I said, are you good at this? You think you're, she said, do you think you're good at, no, she actually said, do you think you're in the mode of goodness? And I said, well, if you look at Bhagavad Gita, by those symptoms, I'm vegetarian, I don't sleep a lot, I'm trying to, be clean and humble and equipoise and all this. She didn't say anything, and she said, if I would have asked that question to most women would not have answered like that. She wasn't criticizing me, she just said men, they're just more, I don't know what the word is, uninhibited or shameless or self-confident. It's just like she was asking me a question, so I was just trying to state objectively, and she said, is that most women wouldn't say that. They wouldn't answer like that. I said, that's interesting. I know some women who would, but she said, yeah, but most wouldn't. I know some men who would. She said, men are just like, if they're good at something, it's like they'll just tell you, not that they're proud. Yeah, I'm good at this. But women will say, no, are you good at this? Well, I like to do it. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Can we, Pranab Roy says, can we have many subtle bodies existing simultaneously in different reality while we're experiencing the earth? Well, I would just say, I wouldn't say many subtle bodies, but your mind can definitely, be existing in many strange places as it does at night when you dream, and as you think of many things. Yeah. But we talked about this yesterday, that you can exist in the spiritual world. Excuse me, you can exist in the material world and your mind in the spiritual world. So technically speaking, you're not really in the material world. You're really where your mind is. Your body may be somewhere else. You know anything about hypnosis? Or visualization? You can take people in visualization to a situation in which they can experience that, they can taste it, and feel, and you could in visualization have them excuse me, experience different things. And we know from Bhagavatam, in Nectar Devotion, that Vaishnava who burnt his hand when he was cooking sweet rice in his mind. So that's there. Men are encouraged in society to be confident. That's exactly what my daughter said. Women, even in modern materials, are supposed to be in the back. Well, you took the words right out of her mouth. Even in the material world, if a woman is confident, people are intimidated, or they don't expect her to be. It causes a lot of internal conflict for many ladies. Yeah, and men, men's egos are such that it's like a lot of men just have a hard time being outdone by women. And if men have a hard time with women who are more intelligent than them, they should become Hare Krishna devotees, because that would solve the whole problem. Because they could go quote Janaka Pandit that women are less intelligent, and even though they're thinking she's more intelligent because that's what they saw, they can then know that she's actually not, because Janaka Pandit said they're less intelligent, so then their egos they won't get bruised. So I think all men who are intimidated by women should become Hare Krishna devotees. That would solve their problem. What do you think? Good idea? Think that's a good idea? I don't know. Yeah. This is not theoretical. It actually happens in the Hare Krishna movement, as you women know. Marco says, it's very interesting how in the Gaura Leela there are several associates of Lord Chaitanya who are combined forms of various devotees. Yeah, eternal associates of Radha Krishna. So manifest that, yeah, you read that in CC. This devotee is a combined form of this coward boy and Krishna's conch shell, something like that. Not just this coward boy and that coward boy, or this devotee and that devotee, but sometimes it's like a combination of this person and yeah, that could keep you up even more nights than being in Lord Chaitanya's Leela and Krishna Leela, Gaura Leela. That keep you up a few nights. This one could keep you up a lot of nights. In case of Sri Gadadhar Pandit, which is a manifestation of Radharani, as Bhakti Shakti, could you elaborate on this topic, please? Shaktis. I think the way we understand it is the Shaktis of that person. It's a manifestation of so-and-so Shakti. But at the same time, when Prabhupada explains this, he explains it basically what I've been saying, that it's possible because it's spiritual, that they can manifest in different ways. From what I remember reading, and probably more study needs to be done on this. From what I remember reading is Prabhupada's saying, because it's spiritual, it's not within the restriction of limitation. And because you're a devotee, you have that power to be in different places at the same time. In the spiritual world, in the material world. Like you say, Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari. So is Rupa Manjari not existing now because Rupa Goswami is in Gaura Leela? No, they're existing simultaneously in two places. How does that happen? Because like Krishna can expand when you're a pure devotee, you have that ability. So that's the other answer. So either it's a Shakti of that devotee entering the body of another devotee, or it's actually they have the power to expand. And from what I've studied, when Prabhupada explains this, he doesn't elaborate on it. Like we like to elaborate on, try to understand all these things. Prabhupada never really, when he describes these things, as Marco, you probably know, he never describes how it is. He just says, so-and-so is a combined combination of this devotee and that devotee, and he doesn't explain it. And when asked, that's basically what I said, is what he said. And I think sometimes devotees may not be satisfied with that answer, but I think the import of the answer is, sorry, Prabhupada, like Prabhupada saying, sorry, you can't understand it. It's not limited. This is transcendental, it just happens, like it's possible. Okay, you'll understand it when you, like sometimes the answer is you understand it when you understand it, which sounds like a cop-out. But that's basically what Prabhupada was saying. There's a limitation of what you can understand because you're just going to look at it from your material perspective. But, it's interesting because the devotee becomes very powerful. The pure devotee becomes very powerful. Like he has a lot of the power that Kṛṣṇa has. Like we had talked about Prabhupada coming to New York, and Prabhupada's godbrother said that it was actually Nityananda's Shakti working through Prabhupada that made him successful. And then the godbrother said, if Nityananda Prabhu came personally, it wouldn't have been any different because Nityananda was personally within Prabhupada by his Shakti. So you could say Prabhupada is a combined combination of Bhaktisiddhanta and Nityananda. Or they say Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is an incarnation of Rupa Goswami. But I never understood it exactly that Rupa Goswami has again appeared, which could be, but it was never explained that way. I always understood it that his Shakti, well, I think it was explained, it could be that, or it could be that he embodied Rupa Goswami, his mood, his understanding so perfectly that he was like Rupa Goswami. So they say he's manifestation of Rupa Goswami's Shakti. So that's also there. So that's the way we see it. And I've never seen Prabhupada elaborate on it. And my conclusion is that there's some things that he doesn't elaborate on. Well, the other reason, one, because it's the limitation that we have, and then the fact that we would understand it when we you'll understand it when you understand it. Like the fact that it's almost like the fact that we have these questions is the answer. Like you ask a question and the answer is you can't understand, and then that's, if I understood I wouldn't have asked the question. So it's proof that I don't understand, and that this is something that can't be explained exactly. You'll have to understand it by your own advancement and purity. So that's one side of the answer. Sometimes, maybe not for this question that you're asking, Marco, but sometimes the answer is, or Prabhupada would, be asked a question, he would say, why are you asking this question? Like, does it matter? Like do you just want to ask this question just to know? Is it relevant? And I think sometimes when Prabhupada was giving that reply, he was looking at the person and thinking, you should be asking different questions, like how to get up at 4 o'clock and how to finish 16 rounds a day. And you should be asking those questions. And now you're asking some question about, there's the Mars here, the moon here, and it goes here, and then these big birds, they fly from planet to planet, and they lay eggs. And how is it that they lay eggs, and the eggs that hatch in the air, and how do they and like, why are you asking all these questions? Which is another way of saying, what does it have to do with anything that's like relevant to you? So sometimes that's why Prabhupada would answer questions like that, just like kind of like not really answer them because it's not relevant. So those are two reasons we might see that Prabhupada says something and it's like, wow, this is interesting. And we're like looking through his books and we're like trying to find the answer and we don't find it. Because Prabhupada felt like it doesn't matter, it's not necessary, or You can understand, and can understand means you will understand. So, and it's not necessary now to understand. It's not relevant to your preaching and Sankirtan, and you will understand it. And then what I would say, Marco, one thing we can understand is that we can incarnate, we can have Nityananda's potency, we can have Prabhupada's potency incarnate through us. So we can be you can be a combination of Marco and Prabhupada's Shakti and Mahaprabhu's Shakti. We can be all of these things, and we should be all of these things. Right? So that's, I think, a better way for us to look at it. Whose Shakti do we want to be able to do our service? And my wife hasn't come here. I don't know, maybe she doesn't want to go cow seeing, bull seeing. Yeah. But Marco, why don't you come up with a few examples for class tomorrow, so we can discuss this a little more. It's interesting. Or why don't you, Marco, why don't you do some research and see if you can find any more information about this. And in my recollection of studying of this topic, if there's any more information about it, my recollection was I didn't understand it. Hare Krishna. Like sometimes Prabhupada would talk about the fifth canto, and he would say, yeah, I don't really understand. Sometimes. Things are a bit transcendental. We may not understand. But we just humbly have to admit that. That's what I remember. Either Prabhupada did not elaborate, or if there was any other elaboration, it was kind of one of those, but if this, then how? That is one soul and two, but it's a man of two different devotees now. Well, which devotee is it? And are they a third person? Or, it's like, ding, 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 and you just get a headache. But anyway, if you want to do that, that would be good. Let's see what you come up with. If you come up with more than giving us a headache. Kamini is taking off from where we were talking about the question my daughter asked me, and the observation my daughter made, which was the same as Kamini's observation, that women are taught to be, should we say, more humble, more quiet, less egotistical. Actually, guidance is really needed for us ladies to help us navigate our personalities, how to endeavor to be humble and yet still be natural, without feeling we need to be someone we're not. Well, you remember that story I told yesterday about Govindadasi, who went into the Ramakrishna mission and just interrupted the event and told them this is wrong? My observation, let me tell another story. When Prabhupada came to America, as far as I know, women in India didn't even drive cars, which is interesting. I don't know why. I guess they didn't trust women like that they could do it or something. That's kind of interesting. You want to do some trivial research, Google why women at some point in history didn't drive cars. Probably because the men thought they weren't capable. And, Prabhupada comes to America and the culture is so different. So the women are doing things that traditionally in India women didn't do. They're doing it in America. And so Prabhupada's seeing this, so he's adjusting to it. And he's kind of liking it, because it means his female disciples can do more. And two of his female disciples somehow ended up in Jaipur. I don't know the story, why they were there. Or maybe they were there and with all the devotees, and then all the devotees left, went somewhere else, and Prabhupada told them to stay there, try to do something. And they were doing kirtan every day, and people really liked their kirtan, and one thing led to another, and they organized a Pandal program in Jaipur. It was quite successful. And Prabhupada said something like, I'm so proud of you, I'm so happy in India that women never do things like this. So he actually liked it. And I think that's important for women to know. That when the women, they did something in the preaching field that maybe traditionally women had never done. Prabhupada liked it. He was like, yes. Not only do we have men, but we have women that are doing what the men are doing. So, and Prabhupada liked it so much, he coined this term, we're preaching with redoubled strength. What did Prabhupada mean, redoubled strength? Well, you read the purport, he meant we're doubling the work we're doing because the women are doing it also. And he was referring to book distribution. So, people criticize me, I allow women in the movement, etc. And Prabhupada said, yeah, but they don't live with the men. And they're coming and they want to serve. And because they're coming, we're distributing twice as many books and spreading Kṛṣṇa consciousness in so many ways. So he coined that redoubled strength. That was a reference to the women. So, Kamaniya, from my observation, Prabhupada liked it when the women were bold preachers. They didn't like it if they'd come home and, yell at all the men, chastise them. I distributed more books than you, so I can tell you what to do. No, not like that. But when they went out there and were bold preachers, he liked that. He really did. It's just when you come back from Sankirtan, you just got to calm down a bit. And of course, like you say, you have to be who you are, because if you try to be who you are not, you will end up schizophrenic, I guess. Neurotic, or whatever the psychological term is, split personality, I think. You'll have a split personality because you'll be inside one person and outside trying to be another person, and that doesn't always work. Now, someone could criticize me and say, well, the women have to be a certain way. Yes, or they should be a certain way. And that's true. But at the same time, there's a limitation for many Western women in what they can be, having been raised in the West and conditioned to see themselves in a specific way. And so most people understand that and make adjustment for that. And even though we read in Bhagavatam, this is how a woman should be, to expect her to be that way and not have been raised to be that way, that's a big expectation. And to expect yourself to be that way and not be raised that way, that's also a big expectation. So you do your best. You know what it means to be a woman. At the same time, you balance that with your preaching. That would be a good topic for Thursday's class, right? Balancing chastity with boldness. Balancing chastity with being who you are. All right, that'd be a great topic. What do you think, Kamini? Would that be a good topic for Thursday? Marcelo's here, all the way from Argentina. Women driving cars equals independence. I think that answers a lot right there. Wow. Don't give them independence. Driving gives freedom. You can go wherever you want. Yeah. Good points. Vrindavani grew up in India. So Vrindavani, can you tell us, when did women start driving cars in India? Like, not just one or two, but when did it become normal? Like 1990s? Not till the 1990s? And when were women given the right to vote? And when were they given the right to vote in America? Like the 1920s? That's interesting. I don't want to depress all the women, or not depress them, make them angry, but the men didn't really, not driving cars because, I don't know, I always thought that they thought women would like crash the cars or something. But I'm sure I was wrong, and you were right, it gives them independence. But in America they go, oh, woman drivers, they have this stigma. So it must have been part of that. But they, not even allowed to vote. That's like, that's interesting, isn't it? Well, in another sense, allowing anyone to vote is interesting, because nobody knows anything about politics anyway, so why should they vote? Like, you know about domestic policy, you know about foreign policy, you have a brain to understand which candidate is the best. The average person, 90+%, 95, no idea, and they're voting, so. Why stop the women from voting? You think you guys know who to vote for? Stupid. Women were supposed to be subdued in the olden days to feed the husband's false ego, which was important for his position in society. Otherwise, they would say you're a henpecked person. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a story. My wife told me this story last night. This is a classic male ego story. Ravi Shankar, the sitar player, he's been married 3 times. His first wife played sitar better than him. And they would go on stage and they would perform. And at the end of the performance, everyone would come up to her and say, "That was amazing." And he'd be sitting and watching. And he went completely crazy. He said, "This is not working for me at all. He's not getting the attention." And he said, "You can't perform. You cannot perform publicly anymore. This is ruining me." And she made a vow never to perform publicly. She just became a teacher. And he ended up divorcing her because he's like, he couldn't deal with it. Isn't that interesting? I heard it last night, like around 10 o'clock at night before going to bed. I got to tell you I got to tell you this is amazing. The story goes on. It could make a fantastic movie, but it's not. The rest of it's not so relevant. It's more about him being a bit degraded. But that's the male ego, right? They want to be number one. So, and Prabhupada says that in his books. The submissiveness of the woman is because the man wants to be in charge. It makes him feel good. So, men are on a sliding scale. Some want to be in charge more than others. But he was like, he just wanted a wife who just was very, "Ravi, whatever you say, I'll do." That's like the traditional one. But not all women are constituted that way. So, buyer beware. Before you get married, check out her credentials. And vice versa. Driving was not considered, it was like, not feminine, or it was a male activity like driving a truck. To what extent should we be tolerant? Many times I have seen that tolerance leads to situations of abuse among devotees, especially coming from older to younger. Yeah. We've spoken about this before. And I could give a general instruction, which I think is of value to all of us. When things upset us, not because we're reacting due to our own weakness, but because they're actually hurting other devotees. And it would be wrong not to be upset. Or we feel we're personally being abused, and it would be wrong not to be upset about it. We want to deal with it within the borders of proper etiquette. So that's the real challenge and the real skill. How do I deal with this situation, which is intolerable, which should not be tolerated, and I'm being asked to tolerate, or other devotees are being asked to tolerate? How do I deal with it in a way that we can solve the problem at the same time I don't offend anyone and cause anyone to offend me? That's the skill. And it's what you say, Rukmini, is true. It would be wrong to tolerate certain things because they would be harmful to us or to others. So yes, definitely. This is a big issue. We could give a whole class on this. Actually, in fact, a devotee wrote a book about it. But I could summarize the issue in what he was talking about into this. When someone is in a position of authority, they have to be very careful not to misuse it. Because when they're in a position of authority, there can be this culture of, I'm authority, I'm right, you're not authority, you do what I say, or you're not the authority, so you're wrong. Why am I wrong? Because I said you are, that's why. Was there any other judgment? No. That kind of thing. Okay, I'm exaggerating to some degree, but in some cases that's not exaggeration, it's how it is. So what we're dealing with is situations in our movement where we give people a lot of power. Or not just in our movement, people have power, bosses, government leaders. And so if you have power without some humility and empathy, then you run into these problems where people are mistreated in the name of, I'm the authority, do what I say. So that's where it comes from. And so that really, if we want to address this problem, that's really where we have to address it at the core. But if it's too late to address it at the core in some situations where it's already going on, then you have to speak about it. But you have to do something in a way which won't get you kicked out of the temple or prohibited from coming to the temple, won't offend anybody, won't cause them to offend you, and hopefully done in a way that some solution can come out of it. But I have some good news for you, Rukmini Shakti. There is, as you may know, there's a ministry in ISKCON called ISKCON Resolve, where if there's some dispute that's irresolvable on the local level, they can bring it to ISKCON Resolve, and then one of the members of ISKCON Resolve will mediate. And there's also alms, I called ombudsmen, who are mediators. And so there may be local mediators who can deal with it. And now they're formed a new committee, which is, I'm trying to find more information about. It's called Leadership Misconduct, like the Ministry for Leadership Misconduct. So, particularly relating to if there's misconduct on the part of a leader, devotees have a place to go where that could be resolved or reported so that it doesn't continue. So, that way you don't have to approach that leader who may become offended, or he may become offended if you go to leadership misconduct, but they would deal with it, so it would have a different, they would investigate, and they may say, he didn't do anything wrong. Or they may say, he did something wrong, thank you for letting us know, and they would talk to him. And, maybe educate him, maybe he didn't realize that was wrong, train him how to do it right, or maybe they would think that this person is unfit. So, we have to go through those things. So the point is, a devotee should act in a certain way, but we can't always expect in all situations they'll act properly. That's just a reality. We're conditioned souls. And because we're in the material world, even though we follow Krishna consciousness, we're still, the fire of Maya still exists, and sometimes we get a little too close to the fire. The message also, Rukmini Shakti, is to all of us who, if we ever become leaders, to be very careful to serve the people under us and not exploit them in any way. Don't think you have the right to control and exploit just because you're given a official position above them. That's where it goes. Okay, so we went for an hour. That's better than a half hour. We started at 9, and I had to do something that's very important. The government has some programs where they're willing to support people who can't travel around the world and preach. So if they're willing to do that, then why not take advantage? So today's Tuesday. Tuesday night we have class. I forgot last week. Radha Priya had to call me because at these reoccurring classes I don't put on my calendar. So Radha Priya, if you don't see me at 7 o'clock, give me a call. So we're having a class. The class is called Forgiveness. The philosophy of forgiveness, but we've branched out in discussing other virtues and how they relate and interact and synergize with forgiveness, because they're all, and the similarities. We talk a lot about compassion, integrity, kindness, and the similarities in why they manifest, why they don't, how they affect us, why we need to manifest those qualities, how they'll help us. If we don't develop those qualities, how they'll hurt us. And then the discussion kind of goes in the direction of wherever the questions take us. So if you want to come, That is on Zoom, and that is on my Facebook page somewhere. Must be advertised. Or in my website. If it's not there, you can just go to my website. It should be there. So thank you for coming, and Hare Krishna to all of you. And Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.